Hello, welcome back to Harry's Book Cafe. Today we are tackling the ultimate mountain of modern fiction. We are ranking the novels of King himself, Stephen King. Now, full disclosure, I grew up reading Stephen King. His stories are practically baked in my DNA as a reader, which means I have an incredible deep love for his work, but it also means I have brutally honest opinions. These rankings are completely my own, and trust me, some of my placements are going to heavily divide the comment section. Now, if you see a book on this board today that you haven't read before or want to conquer yourself, I have put the affiliate links for all of them in the description down below. Click on these links, help support the cafe at no extra cost to you. So grab a coffee or a cider in my case and hit the subscribe button, and let's find out which books belong in the tiers of absolute masters and which ones you should avoid. Okay guys, now as you can see, I have divided the rankings into 5 layers. We got masterpiece, amazing, solid, average, and avoid. Now these layers are pretty much self-explanatory, so without further ado, let's jump into the list. To start with, we have Salem's Lot. This is Stephen King's second novel after Carrie, and this is about a vampire invasion of a small town in May. This novel is heavily inspired by the classic Dracula, except King was wondering at the time what will happen if a vampire lands in a small town in May rather than a big city. So that was the result of Salem's Lot. This is a pivotal novel in his career because his agent at that time told him that if he were to publish this one, then he will be known from that moment on to be a horror writer. I read it a couple times. I just find it interesting, but not that interesting, if you know what I mean. So I'm gonna put this in the solid ranking. Right, so the next book, let's pick one. Desperation. Now this one is not that well known by many King fans. This is a very interesting title. I have read it, and I can safely say that this novel is actually a novel of two halves. This tells the story of a deranged police chief stopping travelers in the middle of Nevada desert, and he would brutalize them locked up in cell. And the story in the first half of the book was told so well. The deranged chief was depicted to perfection. You really, as a reader, fear for the other passengers and fear of the chief because he's just so violent and skillfully done. However, as the truth start to unravel and you understand what's going on, the depictions start to decline. And that has always been the problem with many of Stephen King's earlier works, that he's able to start the novel really well. Some of the times the ending is find very much wanting. This one is the extreme version of that. I really want to love this book because I enjoyed it a lot the first half, but unfortunately the second half really lets it down. So unfortunately you're gonna give it just an average. Okay, next one. This one I believe many people are quite familiar with. This is Cujo. It's about a massive dog that has gone rabid and stopping a woman and her daughter, I believe, or her son, from coming out of her car. This was very interesting. It's quite different from some of Stephen King's other works. I read it very much a long time ago, and I remembered that I enjoyed it very much. However, it's not one of Stephen King's most famous one or the most well-written one. So it's a solid entrance to this tier, so that's where it belongs, Cujo. Now the next one I believe is perhaps one of the most famous King's novel, and that is Green Mile. I believe you haven't read the novel, you must have seen the movie. It's a sad story of injustice and racism of a wrongly convicted black giant. This is one of the novels that truly has the power to make you cry. It's so well written, and all the characters, from the prisoner himself all the way to the other prison officers, are so vividly depicted. You truly believe that you know these people. The evil individual is done to perfection. There's no corny or cheesy stuff. It's all so believable. So this Green Mile is definitely a masterpiece. Now this is a trilogy of Mr. Mercedes. This really is an interesting book, or books rather. These trilogy represent a pivotal sort of redirection of King's efforts. Previously, he's known for writing horror. He's the king of horror, right? But from that moment on, it represented his endeavor into the crime sections. Man, these books really demonstrated just how versatile King is and how amazing a writer he really is. His trademark ability to describe characters in so vivid detail is now transferred into this trilogy. The criminal cases are just fantastic. And out of this trilogy, we know Holly, the female heroine, that has been featured in Stephen's book ever since. So this deserved to be a truly amazing book or books. The next one, again, this is a rather unusual one, The Eye of Dragon. This was written gift to his daughter Naomi as a birthday present, I believe. This is a fairy tale story, and I believe this is one of the only traditional fairy tale that King has written. It tells a evil servant that poisoned the king or killed the king and then get the smaller, weaker brother of the two to become the king himself, whom he can control easily. So this is a classic tale of revenge and power struggle in a royal family. This is an amazing read. I really enjoyed it when I read it, and I enjoy different story, the different vibe that this book has given me. So I'm going to give this a solid. The next one we're going to talk about is Insomnia. Now this again is one of the lesser known novels of King's endeavor. It tells the story of a guy who cannot sleep, as the title suggests. This symptom gets worse and worse, so much so that he developed an unusual ability where that he can see aurora or auras of people, and this discovery really startled him. And at the same time, he realized that there are beings called bold doctors who are cutting people's life short by cutting off their auroras. I did not enjoy this book. I remember the time we were reading it is way too long. It's too much of slow burn and not enough action happening. So I will give that an avoid. If you're new to Stephen King, then this is definitely not the book to start with. Next one is The Outsider. Now this is a very interesting. This was published after Mr. Mercedes, and again it represents the continuation of King's venture into the crime novel genre. And again, this is beautifully done. It features one of the heroine from Mr. Mercedes, Holly. And Holly was able to help the local detective to find the murder of the crime depict in the novel. The crime that was committed has, in the traditional sense, no way of being solved. However, needless to say that this is a novel that I truly enjoyed. This one is slightly difficult in terms of ranking. I'm not entirely sure whether to put that in the solid section or put that in the amazing section. Or in the interest of prudence, I will put it in the solid section here, because it is good, but it's definitely not as good as Miss Mercedes. Carrying on, we're going to talk about one of his most famous novels, and that is The Shining. Again, just like Green Mile, if you haven't read the book, I believe quite a lot of you must have seen the movie by Jack Nicholson. So this novel is about a family who are in desperate financial trouble and in desperate need of a job. Having no other choices, the husband accepted a guardian or janitor job for a hotel called Overlook Hotel during the winter month. He needs to be there to make sure everything still functions the way they do, and he accepts it. But their son, Dan, has this ability called Shining, and it's a classic haunted house novel, and it's a little bit of slow burn, to be honest, for my liking. But overall, the story is incredibly well told. You really do feel for Danny and his mother as the father slowly descend into madness. However, in my personal opinion, I don't think this is a masterpiece that many other people believed it to be so, just because it's too much of a slow burn to really give it a masterpiece level. So with that taken into consideration, I'm going to put it into the amazing tier. Next one, this is a very interesting novel, is Dead Zone. Now this, just like The Eyes of the Dragon, is not a well-known novel by Stephen King. I read it many years at the time, and I remember I enjoyed this novel so tremendously. This novel tells a man who has a special ability. When he touches someone, he knows that what this someone has done or will be doing, so he can tell the future by touching him and whether or not this individual is good or bad. The main protagonist, if I remember correctly, is a teacher. One day he touches this guy and he knew that the guy will become the future president of the United States, and that president will start a World War III, and he then take that action into his own hands, trying to prevent this from happening. It's such a great novel. It really is beautifully told. I enjoy the characters, I enjoy the storyline, and I leave that in the amazing section. And as I've said before, The Dead Zone is one of his lesser known novel, which is criminal really, because if you haven't read it, trust me, you can definitely pick up this book. For beginners of Stephen King, then I recommend that Dead Zone is definitely a good novel to start. Joyland. Joyland is a fascinating novel. This novel actually predates Mr. Mercedes trilogy to be one of his really first try into the crime genre. Joyland tells the story of a brutal murder that has happened in a circus or amusement park in one of the horror houses, but it's far more complicated than just a standard crime murder story. It has some turns like a modern day thriller. I really enjoyed it, and I think this one deserved to be in the solid. It's also one of the first Stephen King books to be published by a hard crime publisher. Okay, the next one, Leslie's Story. Now this is one of Stephen King's professed favorite novel, and it's also his wife's least favorite novel. This novel was inspired during, I believe, 2006, when Stephen King was recovering from double pneumonia. He saw his wife cleaning his study, and that inspired this story where the main protagonist is the wife of a deceased favorite writer, and during her tidying up of the deceased writer's study, she discovered unpublished manuscript and some other secrets that the writer has kept from her all his life. To add to the plot line, there is a crazy fan who knew that there is an unpublished manuscript and start to use any sort of method necessary to try to get that, including physically attacking the wife of the deceased writer. It is not difficult, therefore, to remind me of Misery, which we're going to talk about later. In terms of his overall other calibers, this is definitely not his best novel, so I'm going to put it in the Void section. I'm sure his wife and I agree on this ranking. Over the years, I find Stephen King is a great writer, but he's, in my opinion at least, terrible at recommending books to other people. Some of the books that he's recommended, they were not that good. The Dark Half. This is a story that I did not really enjoy. This is about a twin that were, one of them ate the other during the woman's pregnancy, and that the twin that's been eaten has always bothered the other one who survived and grown up to be a successful writer. I don't remember too much of it, but I do remember I did not really enjoyed it. This is a difficult one. I truly don't think this book has that many merits, so I'm going to put it in the avoid section. Okay, the next one, Rose Meadow. Again, this is King's earlier work, and again, this is perhaps one of the books that's not very well known by many people. It's a rather interesting story, and from the cover itself, you probably can see that this is inspired by the great myth Minotaur. It also involves a bull. The story centers on a female protagonist who has been the victim of domestic violence. Her husband is just this terrible guy, but also a police chief. So one day, in order to escape him, she ran to a shelter. She, I believe, discovered a painting, or she painted herself, and that painting is the doorway to a parallel universe where inside is nothing but a labyrinth, a bit like the one that you will read Minotaur. And just like Minotaur, there is a mad bull inside. So this is about her story of escaping her husband and only find herself in another sort of terrible situation. But eventually she succeeded in avoiding both. This, to be honest, is a very average book. There are parts of it that's very violent, which is great for a horror novel, but overall it's too much of slow burn, nothing really much happens. So I'm gonna leave it here. Okay guys, the next one is super interesting, is the Bachman books. As the name suggests, this is not a single book, but a collection of either 3 or 4, depending on the version that you buy. The Bachman books happened during King's earlier careers, when his career was incredibly successful. So because of that, he had this imposter syndrome descending upon him. He wondered whether or not he's selling this many novels because of his name or because he's truly talented. So to experiment, he wrote full novels under the name of Bachman's, and to see whether he actually have the talent. And to his satisfaction, all these books are selling like hotcakes. As I've said, the Bachman books has 2 versions. The modern one has 3 stories and the older version has 4. There's a very interesting reason for it. The modern one is one short, and that one is The Rage. It's about a teenager who, fed up with his life and unsatisfied with his school life, decided to carry out a school shooting. It is so well done, so realistic. It actually inspired many real-life school shooting. And during one interview, Stephen King said if he regretted writing one novel in his life, that is The Rage. So you can't find The Rage in the modern version in this one. You can still, however, find the Rage in the older version, which is not available on Kindle, so you're gonna have to buy the older one via a paperback or second-hand paperback. I was really lucky that I had this one before and I read all 4 of them. Okay, so apart from The Rage, the other 3 novellas are also incredibly strong. 2 of them are super well known, and they have both been made into recent movies. One of these is The Running Man, and the other one is The Long Walk. Again, that has been made into a movie. And Long Walk is brutal, guys. Is simply brutal. The other one is Road Work, which is the least strong of the four novels. They are certainly amazing. So I'm gonna put that in the amazing section. The next one is Different Season. This is also a novella collection. Unlike the Bachman books, these are much more hold back, much more emotionally resonant with many people. It has much more depth, emotional depth, compared to the more violent version of the Bachman. Different Season is a collection of 4 novellas. One of them is Shawshank Redemption. That is such a famous movie, rather, because people didn't really know that Stephen King wrote that as a novella. But yeah, he did, and Shawshank Redemption is in this collection. The other one is called Apt Pupil, which I absolutely love. Just like Shawshank Redemption, Apt Pupil is so amazing. Apt Pupil tells the story of this teenager who is obsessed about Nazis during the Second World War, and he read everything he can get his hands on and realized that one of his old neighbors, who are in his 90s, is actually a Nazi SS officer. He recognized him and decided to blackmail him. And you don't survive that long as a SS officer just so that you can be blackmailed by a teenager, American teenager. So very soon the Nazi guy turned the table, and it's such a dark tale, and it's so well done. And again, it's made into a movie. This is deservedly sitting on the top of the tier to be one of the masterpieces. It's just an amazing novel. You should give it a try. Now, going into the opposite direction, we're going to talk about Jara's Game. This is a simple story of a couple going to their lakeside retreat somewhere in May, and the husband throughout his marriage has always liked to play SM, although his wife didn't really like it, and he nevertheless played this game with his wife in this cabin. He handcuffed his wife, both hands to the top of the bed. His wife refuses, and he thought she was, being roleplayed. Quite the opposite. And so in rage and terror, she kicked out into this man and to her husband and kicked him in the groin, causing him to have a heart attack and died on the floor with her still chained to the bed. What followed is her struggle to free herself, but it's all about her inner conversation. So you're reading 300 odd pages of her just locking on the bed and having inner monologues. To add a little bit of spice, there is a crazy dog who, attracted perhaps by the body, came into the cabin and started devouring her husband. Although she can't see the dog eating her husband, she can certainly hear it. So it's a pretty good in that sense. But also there is a dark, sinister presence that the wife also sensed is in the cabin, although she was unsure whether this was just her imagination or the dark presence was real. It turned out to be real, but you have to read the novel to get it. It's a great concept, and it really, this book really captures the ability of King to write something that with so little to work with. However, it's too much of a slow burner, just too much, and nothing really happens. So I'm gonna give it an average. Okay, so next one. Let's go. So this is Later. Just like the Joyland is, I believe, also published by the Heart Crime publisher. And again, it represents the continuation of Stephen King's endeavor into the crime genre. This one is so well done. It involves a single mother and her son, who the son has this incredible ability of talking to ghosts when they are first, when the people first dead. And with that ability, he got involved solving crimes, but it was never that easy, and there are darker and more sinister work against them, and it's really satisfying tale, and I enjoyed it tremendously. Just like The Dead Zone, where the novel reminds me of Six Signs, Stephen King's Later reminds me of the movie, what was the one? I See Dead People. Oh yeah, so yeah, it also reminds me of Sixth Sense. This is absolutely amazing novel, so I'm going to leave it here. Okay, let us continue. Dr. Sleep. This is relatively more recent novel by Stephen King. This is a sequel to The Shining. This tells the story when Danny grows up into an adult. His childhood trauma follows him around. He became an alcoholic, and in his endeavor to give up his alcoholism, he was involved into a hospice where he's shining his special ability can put patients out of misery. That's why people called him the Dr. Sleep. However, he met a little girl whose shining is a million times stronger than him, and because of that they immediately have this bond between them. However, there are a group of people roaming around USA in RVs, and there are semi-immortal beings who tortures and eats and kills kids who has this shining ability. So it's about Danny and this little girl defeating those people, which is quite an interesting read. At places a lot more fast-paced than The Shining. However, it does lack the originality of The Shining, and I will leave it here in the solid section here. Look, I got a stand here. I'm leaving that for later, and I got it here. Again, I'm leaving that for later. Let's go to Stephen King's first ever novel, and that's Carrie. This, Stephen King says, is his least favorite novels because he just didn't think Carrie is that good. As I've mentioned before, Stephen King is terrible at recommending books. I completely disagree with his sentiment. I think Carrie is fantastic. She has been bullied terribly in school, so much so that this is a story of her revenge on them, and it's incredibly satisfying. And it's also one of Stephen King's smallest book. I think this is a solid endeavor. As a first book, I think is absolutely amazing, so it deserves its place in the solid section. Again, guys, if you are just starting to get into Stephen King and you're not sure where to start, then Carrie is as good as any, as good as The Dead Zone to start. Definitely give that a try. The next one is On Writing. This is very different. On Writing is his biology, his only autobiology, I believe, about his early lives, and the second half of the book is teaching the craft of writing. Now, personally, I love writing, I love reading, and I find this book very helpful. However, having said that, I must say I have been misled by this novel. The main thesis when he talks about On Writing is that a story should be he compare writing to archaeology, right? He does not want you to plan the entire outline of the story. He wants you to be an archaeologist. The story is buried on the ground and your job is to relieve them, get them out. But you don't know what shape or form that particular fossil that you are getting out of. And that's the good way, because you need to be let the story take you. You as a writer is rather a recorder rather than a creator. And creativity comes from being led by the story. And it works, obviously, for him very, very well. But I think that sort of teaching method only works for a small minority of people. For vast majority of great writers, the outlines are pretty much all set out from the very beginning, chapter by chapter by chapter. And because I believed Mr. King's method, it led me to a few corners that I could have avoided. But when you read that, the first half is about his autobiography, which is really, really interesting. Though for those Stephen King fans, you definitely read it. For those people who are seeking the knowledge from the master on how to write, then take that with a pinch of salt, because his method might not work for everyone. That's what I'm saying. I don't know where to put this book because it's very different to any of his others, so I'm just gonna leave it here in the amazing. Right, next one, Bag of Bones. Okay, so this one is a book that I did not really enjoy. It's about a writer, a moderately successful writer, who, because of the death of his wife, lost his ability to write, or writer's block, a full year long. So he retreated to their summer cabin, and there they discovered a legal battle going on between the local multimillionaire and a single mother with her son or daughter. So it's a battle between the two. The millionaire is the father-in-law of the woman, the single mother, and he's hellbent on getting custody of her child. So this is the story of this writer helping the single mother and her daughter to fight this multi-millionaire. But beneath the surface, there is also a sinister ghost going on. 3 ghosts, in fact, that's haunting the entire village, which add a little bit of spice to the overall story. Now, I'm gonna put it to the average because I did not really enjoy this book. Again, just like all the previous ones, or at least these two, is too slow. Nothing really much happens until the very last. So it's very average, if not to avoid, to be honest. It's very, very average. I'm gonna be generous and put it in the average section. The next one is Needful Thing. Now, this is super interesting. Super interesting. It's very, very long book. It's around about 700 pages, so one of Stephen King's long endeavors. It tells the story of this guy who came into a small town in Maine and set up his shop called Needful Thing. It sells stuff that everyone absolutely has to have at a very reasonable price, cash price and other price. The other price is that in order to get the thing that they truly want for themselves, they have to perform a prank on their neighbor. This is great. This is absolutely a great novel. I think Stephen King is very good at depicting human nature, especially amongst small villages, small towns, and I think he's done it so well. And because people play pranks in the dark to other people, soon the whole town start evolve into just crazy violence against each other, and that's exactly the proprietor of the Needful Thing wants. I enjoy this book despite that it's being so long. It really is slow start in the beginning because you need to set up the whole scene. It's such a spider web, a wide spider web that King has to set for this novel to work truly, and he did. But do be warned that the beginning is quite long, but as soon as you get over that, it is so bloody good. It's just crazy novel where everyone hates everyone in a small village. I love that one. One of my very good favorites. Okay, The Girl Who Loved Tommy Gordon. It's a very simple story of this girl who lost in the wood, and she is also a crazy loyal football fan who loves Red Sox and one of the main players in the team. And her being lost in the wood, she was able to survive, and only able to survive because she listened to the gameplay on her radio, and also she imagined her favorite Red Sox player is beside her and encouraged her to survive. I liked it, but it's not his best novels. I think he's very average and deserved to be in the average section. Christine. Christine is Christine is amazing. Christine is absolutely crazy. It's about this car, a 1972 Portsmouth who's being possessed and start killing people and owners. It's very violent. It's relatively fast-paced. I really enjoyed it. I think it deserved to be the section in a solid. It's not a beginner's book, and Apple keeps doing that, I don't know why. It's not a beginner's book, and neither is the Needful Thing. Now this one, Delirious Claribon. This is an amazing book, and just like Firestarter, which I haven't mentioned, this is criminally underrated novel. Again, it's a very thin novel. On his thinner side, I think it's just sub 300. Story tells the confession of a lady, Delirious Claribon, in the police station. This novel is brutal, is violent. It's about how she murdered her husband and escaped justice, and how she helped someone else kill someone. And it also involves a well. I love this novel. This is the first Stephen King novel that I have read, and I fall in love with King from that very moment on. This is so violent, so lovely, so bloody. I love it. I deserve to be in the amazing section. I would strongly recommend you, if you are starting on the Stephen King journey, then this is the one to read. I love it, and you, I'm sure, will too. By the way, guys, I've mentioned in the introduction, all these books has affiliate links in the description down below. By buying that from the links, it's not going to cost you anything extra, but it really does help this channel to grow, for I will receive a tiny bit of commission. Alright, let's move on. Doomkey. This again is his relatively late endeavor involving a construction boss who suffered an accident to his brain, and his personality changes completely, become irascible, cantankerous, and sometimes violent, which was, enough to destroy his 25-year-old marriage. To recover from his injury as well as his emotional trauma, he escaped to one of the Florida keys called Doomkey, where he discovered that he has talent to be a painter. However, his painting was more than painting itself. It's a lot more than that. They are a sort of gateway to other worlds, and with the painting he was able to see past and future, and he also, by painting the thing that he wants, he can either kill people or heal people. Be like the world best typewriter thing. I think it's a short story that he wrote many years ago. I remember reading that and I remember enjoying it, but it's average. It's okay. Okay guys, we don't have long left, so please bear with me. We're gonna tell you this one. This is completely different to any of King's other novels, and this is a collection of Dark Towers. If you think that this is Stephen King's sci-fi 4/ trilogy, I believe there are 8 in total, and I'm flattering myself by saying that I'm one of few people who actually read the entire collection. It's too complicated to really tell you what it is. It's a quest by this gunslinger to the Dark Tower. The ending is, I don't know, you like me might be pissed off by the ending. I'll leave that for you to judge. I did not appreciate the ending, but the overall journey is very interesting. Deviate from any other novel that King has written. It's very different. I'm gonna put it in the average. Not many Stephen King fans, or not all Stephen King fans, are also fantasy fans. So I think because the accessibility, because the length of the book itself, and because the niche that he tried to satisfy, the writing itself is mediocre compared to his others. The story itself is rather interesting but overly long. So I'm gonna leave it here as average. Okay guys, how many of you has read The Stand? I read it twice. This is Stephen King's biggest novel at 1,400 pages. It's about the end of the world, and the agent for the ending is a manufactured disease which will affect 99.999% of the population. I love this book, love it. I love the part where his writing tells you about how the disease is transmitted from one section to the next. It is the most cinematic writing of any of his book, or of any book at all. That really solidifies why King is one of, if not the greatest writer in modern day America, in modern day English language. The way that he writes the disease transformation from one person to the next is just masterpiece. And then the second half of the book slows down somewhat and it concerns about the rebuilding of our modern society from two very different groups, one evil and one good. But this book is just so good. When you heard the page count of 1,400 pages, that might put you off, but let me assure you, not a single page is wasted, and not a single page will make you feel bored. It is simply sublime. This is not only one of the masterpieces, but the masterpiece of Stephen King. It's just amazing. And I envy those of you who will pick up Stan for the first time. I do. You will absolutely love it. Firestarter. Firestarter is an amazing novel. It tells the story of a father and his daughter escaping from a sinister agency called The Shop. The daughter has developed this very powerful ability, pyroesthesis, I can't remember the name, but it means she has the ability to start fire. And the agency wants to capture her, experiment on her. So it tells the story of the father escaping with her. Eventually they got captured, and it's such a satisfying revenge story of this girl just go no restraint whatsoever and just go on all the agencies. Just beautifully done. I'm going to put it in the amazing section. It's not a masterpiece, despite how good it is. As you can see, masterpiece is really reserved for something that's masterful. Again, this one is criminally underread, criminally underknown. If you are a beginner, then this is a good novel to start. Tommy Knocker, knocking on my door. This is a story quite early on in Stephen King's career concerning a small town that's being taken over by sinister aliens. One of the guys has a metal plate in his head and he's immune to the aliens' sort of communication, and he alone was the hero of this village. He alone has the ability to save them because he's immune. The story is good concept, but it's not that. I mean, it's interesting, but it's okay. I don't think it's something that you would want to read as a beginner. I will put that in the avoid section. Again, just like the previous ones, it's way too long and not enough emotional depth or violence to really justify you reading it, unless you are a hardcore fan. Cell. I love Cell. Many people hate this novel. I don't know why. This one is so violent. It's about our modern anxiety for new technology. The book tells the story of someone has poisoned the mobile network, and when you pick up the phone, when you engage in mobile communication, you turn mad. A bit like zombie. Very violent. And for the violence itself, this one deserves to be in a solid section. If you are someone who like fast-paced action, unrestrained violence, this is the one for you. This is Pet Sematary, and I think this is quite famous amongst Stephen King's novel. Stephen King professed in one of his interviews that this novel scared him so bad that he put it in a drawer for quite a long time before he had courage enough to publish it. He calls Pet Sematary the scariest book he has ever written. I read it twice. I really enjoyed it. I think it's a great concept that there is an Indian burial ground, magical burial ground, that you can bury your loved ones there. Well, if you want to, you can bury your loved ones and they will come back to life. However, comeback version, the Mark II, is not quite the same as the original one. It's just a beautiful original concept, and I think despite the fact that I didn't really like it as much, I think it deserved to be in the amazing section just because it's so original. Right, okay, It. This is perhaps Stephen King's most famous novel. It is amazing, right? Everybody has seen the movie, and it's about this sinister false presence in the imaginary village or town called Derry in Maine, and it's about this four friends, childhood friend, who suffered at the hands of this presence, and when they are adults coming together to capture it. I remember when I first read it, it scared me very, very bad. I think despite what King might say about Pet Sematary as being his scariest novel, I think It deserved that title. modern Pet Cemetery. I loved it. Just like The Stand is over 1,000 pages long, this one is 1,100 pages rather than 1,400 pages. And just like Stand, I read it twice. For some reason, when I read it the second time, I don't feel scared that much, and I feel a little bit disappointing, particularly by the ending. And I think King might have run out of idea for his ending. Is it a masterpiece, or is it amazing for the sheer length of it, and for the sheer originality, for the sheer great writing of it? It deserves to have a place in the masterpiece. Next one, Misery. If it is the scariest novel, I think this one is equally just as scary, if not more. I'm contradicting myself now, am I? I love Misery. I love Misery. It involves this crazy fan who captures this favorite writer against his will because she wants to, because she claims she is his #1 fan. And this story is about capture, about torture. The book has everything. It has a gore. There's so much violence in that. It has psychological horror. There's lots of that. There's massive emotional depth as well. And original. Super original. I think because of all that, it deserved to be in the masterpiece section. It's just so very good. Right, last two, and they are both short story collections. If It Bleeds is a collection of 4 novels, novellas. I prefer The Rats the best in this novel. It is just amazing, just like the different seasons. It has 4 novellas, but they are much more violent than different seasons. And I think The Rats is the best of them all. I recommend this one, truly. So I think I'm going to give it in the solid section. Now, You Like It Darker is another short story collection. This one is amazing, and this is his more recent endeavor. I have a full review of this book. You can find it in my channel. I enjoyed it tremendously, so I'm gonna put it in the solid section. Okay guys, that is the end of this video. I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you do, please give it a thumb up, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. If you are disagree with my ranking system, then please leave a comment down in the comment section. And those of you who are agree with my assessment, then please leave a section down below and let me know what is your favorite Stephen King novel. Okay guys, that's the end of the video, and I shall see you in the next one. Cheerio guys.